bringing you in-depth discussion from one of the rad groups of online writers covering the Edmonton Oilers. Are you ready for Oilers Overtime? Join us as we talk news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and more. All featured on one of the most glorified teams in the NHL. From the great one to the next one. From the boys on the bus to the decade of darkness. This is Oilers Overtime.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another edition of THW Oilers Overtime. My name is Jim Parsons. I'm here with the HockeyWriters.com, and we've got everybody here this week. Fantastic. I almost didn't make it. I'm not feeling so well. I think the allergies or the change of season or whatever is getting to me, but I'm going to forge on through because we got lots to talk about today. The trade deadline is in the rearview mirror. We've got playoffs ahead, hopefully. You know, we got all sorts of stuff to talk about. So we'll get right to it. Colton Pankey's with us. Colton, how are you, buddy?
Good, Jim. Like you said, plenty to talk about. So excited to get going.
Yeah, should be an interesting show. Julian Mongilo's in my down left-hand corner. I don't know where he is for you guys, but Julian, how are you?
Doing good. I'm doing good. Glad to have you back.
And Brian Swain's with us. Brian, buddy, how are you?
Doing good. Welcome back, man.
I appreciate it. All right, let's get right to the topic, I suppose, that's on most people's minds right now with the trade deadline. The Oilers make two moves. They add Brett Kulak from the Montreal Canadiens to kind of round out their left shot defense. And then they get veteran Derek Brassard from the Philadelphia Flyers. Brassard has played now on 10 NHL teams and said today doesn't love moving around so much, but he's excited to come to Edmonton and see what he can do to help the team here. Colton, let's start with you. What did you think of the Oilers trade deadline? Would you categorize them as a winner or a loser? Do you think the additions were good? What was your overall takeaway from the trade deadline?
I would say slight winner. I think we all didn't really expect them to do much, just the limited cap space and everything. I know there's been some negative talk about the price on Kulak, but overall, I think it was pretty good. I really like the Brassard pickup. I just think that he could be really useful down the stretch. He can kind of play up and down the lineup. So overall, I thought with the space Holland had, he did a fine job.
Now, Julian, I saw an article that you wrote where you thought that Holland sort of missed out again and that he's traditionally kind of missed out on trade deadline day. I'm going to assume that you're going to say that this was not the best trade deadline for them. What was your takeaway?
Yeah, it was Holland continues to miss mark on trade deadline. That was the title of the article. I kind of got torched online for it, which is fine. Everybody has their own opinion. But I'm more of the mind that it was a loss for me overall. I mean, I like the players that they picked up. I think that Brassard gives them a good amount of depth. He can be very versatile, like Holland kind of explained. So I like that pickup, and I even like Kulak as a player. I just thought that they kind of overpaid for the price, and I understand that the market was already set prior to Holland, making this move. And it wasn't set by him. It was, the Lozon deal for a second rounder was probably where that came from, but he had the leverage again, and it just seemed to have slipped away, more or less like the Keith deal, where, I didn't see Kulak as being that much of an upgrade over what they already had in the system that could fill in that role that you needed to pay for a second, a seventh, and a player off your roster. I know Legason is kind of on the bubble anyway, probably wouldn't have came back, needed more opportunity. So they're not really losing much if you're not going to use the guy, but for a second, to me, Chris Russell and Kulak almost do the exact same things for you. So maybe Kulak's a little bit more physical and has shown like lately that he can play a little bit more of the minutes. But I think that's because he was in an elevated role in Montreal, not because he was slotted where he needed to be, because he's probably going to be in the third pair for the Oilers. So overall, I understand why he did the moves, and I like the players that he brought in. I just didn't like the price, and I thought that it was more of them middling along and using excuses that they didn't have enough cap space to make something bigger out of it.
Brian, do you agree with that? Are you thinking that Holland could have done better with what he had available to him, or are you like Colton thinking that this was a decent takeaway for them?
I might almost just give my platform to you, Jim, because I know like you and Julian have different takes on this, and I thought you both made compelling points. So, I'll let you say what you have to say. I'll just throw in quickly though. I agree. I thought it was an overpay. I'm not overly that familiar with Kulak. I haven't seen him play a ton. So but I agree that I don't. From what I have seen, he doesn't necessarily bring anything that isn't already there and isn't worth the overpay. And another thing I'll just toss into, I thought it was a bit of a loss not being able to move Archibald. I just think having him around, I know this is going to open up a whole can of worms if we go down that road, but I just think having him around is a waste of a roster space right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, to that end, they tried, right? Ken Holland talked to Daniel Nugent-Bowman of The Athletic and said, yeah, I tried. I even told his agent and the player that I would try to move him. And he just said the only people that were interested in taking him, and he didn't mention teams, but wanted a sweetener, and he wasn't willing to give up the sweetener they were asking for. So he likes
which says a lot about how valued he is around the league.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great if he could play more than half the games, but
even in markets, like there are a lot of places where there are American teams right now that don't have another Canadian date on the schedule the rest of the season, and potentially would not cross paths with Canadian team in the playoffs. But
yeah,
anyway, I digress.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It could be part of the fact that he is or isn't going to play. It could be part of the fact that he just chooses not to be vaccinated. You don't know why teams aren't interested, right? I mean, it could be just that they don't like him like the Oilers like him. So, I'm not sure. In regards to the trade deadline and my disagreement with Julian there, I guess the one counter argument that I'll make is that the overpay, when you're looking at a second for a guy like Kulak, what you have to take into consideration here is the salary, one, the retention, two, what he could potentially become for the Oilers. And I will say that you are right. Like Chris Russell is very similar to Brett Kulak. The difference between, for me anyway, is that Brett Kulak will consistently play 18 to 22 minutes a game, every game, all the time. And he's smart enough. You can move Chris Russell over to the right side. So now you have both of them, right? If you want, you've got Chris Russell as your depth guy. Russell, to me, is unfortunately not always in your lineup. He's like Mike Smith, right? It's just like you're not sure if he's going to make it from game to game when he plays. He can be pretty effective, but you don't know if he's going to stay injury free. And I think that was a concern for the Oilers, was that, we like Russell, but he's also going to go next year. This is his final year on a deal, right? And I don't imagine he's going to be back. So they wanted a player who's local, who they could probably sign. And I think they're going to try. From what I understand, it sounds like they've already had or are planning to have initial discussions just about whether or not Kulak's interested in sticking around. So for me, and the Derek Brassard thing, I mean, that's just, I don't know how much he'll play. I'm not sure how useful he'll be, but when you're paying $400,000 for a guy who's been there, played 117 odd, playoff games, and has been everywhere, can do faceoffs, can penalty kill a little bit, why would you not, right? Especially when your options are guys like Tyler Benson or people who just haven't been there and
tourists.
Done that. Yeah. So to me, it was just smart moves. I do get what you're saying though, in that the salary is an issue because for the most part, it's Ken Holland's doing, right? Yes, a lot of teams were in their own problems with salary caps and things like that, but Holland created some of his own salary cap issues, right? By adding for Duncan Keith and all that other stuff, which I still don't love that deal. I like Duncan Keith, the player, but I've always maintained that I didn't like the trade because he didn't retain anything. I don't know. I mean, let me ask you this, Colton. Do you consider the Evander Kane addition a trade deadline addition? Because that changes the equation if you do.
I definitely do. I think I'd seen your article earlier today, Jim, and like you had said, it's kind of like the Tyler Toffoli thing with the Flames. Like they don't happen at the deadline, but it's still a pickup in the season, which I believe counts as a deadline thing. But I did want to add on with what you had said about Holland, and I think it's frustrating. Like I'd said, like I liked the deadline simply because he didn't have cap space, but like you said, that is his own fault, and it's frustrating to see teams that are have much better rosters than the Oilers and like the Panthers and the Avalanche, and they're able to get these big gets still. And it's just he really has dug himself into a hole with certain contracts he's given out, and I think that's the really frustrating part, especially as McDavid and Draisaitl continue to get further into their contracts.
That's kind of where I'm at too. Like he's making the excuse he didn't have cap space, but if you're willing to make these, it's always that he doesn't, we were on the bubble, so we couldn't make a move, or we didn't have the cap space, so we couldn't make a move. Like to me, you're starting to create this like constant excuse that you couldn't do much because you were limited for other reasons, which as a general manager, you're supposed to, other teams are as cap strapped as they are, if not worse. and being able to move different pieces around. And if that means that you need to move that first, and this is the year you move it to get a player and have somebody else or another broker team retain salary on a transaction that's going to actually make you better and push players down into the lineup to create depth, that's what you need to do. And it just seems like he's reluctant to make that move at some point. And it's like, when is that move going to come? Like, you see the Leafs, they add big guys like Giordano, they add the Flames are adding big guys like Toffoli, the Hagel deal. Like, you're giving up assets to make your team better, and it's not been that way for the three-year odd years that it's been with Holland behind the bench here.
And this is the year to do it too, right? Like, with Vegas really struggling, like the division's wide open this year. I know the Flames are
100%.
If there's a year to go for it, this is probably the best year to do it.
Okay, Julian, let me ask you this, because Brian mentioned it already a little bit. They tried to move Archibald, didn't happen. Who on the roster do you see? And I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just asking, who do you think Holland could have moved to clear up that space? Now, let's say they don't move the first. Toronto didn't move their first. A lot of teams didn't move their first, right? I don't know that it would have been a great idea for Edmonton to move their first round pick. But who on the roster would another team have taken on to free up the space that you're talking about?
Well, that's part of the thing. I mean, like, Cassian's a guy that kind of sticks out. And even if it means that you're moving Barrie, it has to be a hockey deal that's going to make your team better. I'm not sure what that would have been. If that means like you're going to go after a goalie, like even if it means moving Koskinen to bring in a goalie, like these are things. I mean, the goalie situation we knew wasn't going to be Fleury because of, the location reasons for the most part. So I understand that. And maybe you didn't see anything else as an upgrade, which I kind of agree to disagree on that, because I think that there was still things that they could have done, because Smith is really scaring me with, though he's played a little bit better lately. Just his health is kind of scaring me. But overall, I just think that you have to give something to get something. And we haven't seen Holland push his chips in the table and say, let's do this. And like we said, like, you're battling the Kings right now, and they're going to be probably your playoff matchup, it looks like. And if that's the case, they're pretty banged up as it is. And you have a great shot to at least get past the first round here. So why not make this the year that you're going to push it all on the table and say, let's do this, because you have the prospects that you can move. You have things, assets piled up. Like, it's always seemed to be pushed on further down the line. But like you said too, like, I like Kulak, and I think they made a smart move because he is from Alberta, and it's hard to find players that are going to stick around, right? Just because of the location purposes there as well. So a smart move. And if he resigns, it'll kind of change my tune a bit, because at least you'll have a guy further down the road.
Brian, was there any trade that you saw from another team where you're like, oh man, why didn't Edmonton get in on that one?
Not really. I mean, I don't think there were great moves out there. And part of that is the fact that I think Holland's track record in Edmonton too. Like, I think we saw a lot of creativity with other GMs doing things as Julian alluded to, making moves to put themselves in a position to make these acquisitions. And that's just not what Holland is showing me, that he has not been, very fleet of foot when it comes to making those kind of moves. And so I wasn't expecting anything. I don't see anything out there that could have been made with this management group.
Yeah, with the goaltending, Capo Kakinen was really the only player that moved.
There was nobody out there.
I'm not sure I would have done that. I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't know that I would have traded him for Mikko Koskinen right now. Mikko Koskinen's playing well, and so it sort of forces your hand. And I don't think teams are going to just take on Mike Smith so you can get Capo Kakinen. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure what the deal would have been that the Oilers could have done to improve this roster. But when you look at Evander Kane, when you look at Brett Kulak, when you look at Derek Brassard, the only thing they really didn't do was address their goaltending. You could make the argument, Julian, and I agree with you, that maybe there's somebody better than Barrie that would fit on this roster on their blue line. Or maybe Cassian is a guy you could move because he makes too much money. But I think you want Cassian in the playoffs, and the Oilers have shown that they certainly like him there. So I don't know. Like, it's tough. It's a tricky one.
Yeah, it is. It is. But it's like the bold move that's missing for me. Like, the Leafs waived one of their starting goaltenders in order to try and make something happen, right? Like these are bold moves and big decisions that are being made, and it just seems that it's not happening here.
And the Oilers, to your point, Julian, the Oilers have the Kings, but likely in the first round. The Leafs who are making these moves have to get past the defending two-time champions.
It's an arms race in the Atlantic, and they're trying to bolster, like they were like nobody else in the Pacific made moves except really the Flames. Like Vegas didn't really, they the only move I think they made got vetoed or reversed.
Well, they got their trade down addition in Eichel, I would suggest.
Yeah,
right?
I guess you could say that. But like in terms of like the Kings didn't add anybody, they were still banged up and they didn't choose to add anybody. Like to me, it was a missed opportunity that, you know, they're as good as to go and could potentially meet the Flames in the Pacific Final.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
The West didn't do much.
No,
You know, outside of Colorado, who was already the best team in the league. Minnesota added Fleury, but the West didn't do very much. Calgary and Edmonton did their stuff early, right? Colton, do you think it's a lot to do with the injuries? Like the fact that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is coming back here on Thursday as people watch this, it's probably going to be that game against, what is it, San Jose they play? They're pretty healthy, you know, for the most time, for the first time in a long time, everybody's playing. Do you think that had a lot to do with why Holland didn't really go and do what he did a couple years ago, which was trade for like an Andreas Athanasiou or something like that, where he really boosted the lineup, or at least tried to more, and it didn't pay off? Like, do you think the health of this team, being that they're pretty much fully ready to go, is why he didn't do more?
I mean, maybe he'll try and say that. I kind of agree with what Brian said. We're just other GMs, I think, seem to be crafty, or like with Zito in Florida, kind of, he's done things the last few years now. Like there's guys that are just, I think, I don't want to sound too harsh, but I think just like smarter with the cap. Like they kind of have these tricky little navigations they're able to do that Holland just hasn't proven he's able to do that. And then just some of the extensions he's done in the past years that have tied them up. I don't know. I just don't have a lot of confidence in the management group. So no, I don't think
it seems like the creativity's missing. Like there's like everybody else is, you know, flipping this guy and taking this broker. And I don't know, the creativity's missing there to manipulate the cap, knowing like that's how you have to operate when you are so high against the ceiling, right? And all these teams are doing
it's almost like he's playing chess and the rest of the league is playing checkers, or like he's still operating with like a 2002 mentality.
Yeah, exactly. Like behind the times.
Yeah, if it's not in the guide and record book, and it's not, he's not doing it, right? Like, yeah, no, he's definitely old school. That is for sure. He needs somebody maybe in that and as assistant GM or something that can be like, hey, Kenny, we could do this, you know, like this is allowed. Yeah. I mean, the only time that it isn't when you do what Vegas did, right? And you try to trade a player that has,
at least they tried.
Yeah, but
they still try.
I'll tell you, you talk about Julian getting host for your article. I'm curious to see what mine does tomorrow. I wrote an article about the Vegas Golden Knight, how I think they went from Cinderella's team to the villain of the NHL, and I'm wondering what kind of feedback I'm going to get.
Oh, they're full evil empire now.
Oh yeah,
they are full on evil empire.
Yeah, Julian, what do you think? Like, is this Oilers team as it is with the guys coming back and Nugent Hopkins going to be in the lineup on Thursday? Is this a decent team that can make a run, or are you thinking the fact that they didn't is going to be their downfall?
I look at the team like on paper, and I was just literally just looking to see where everyone would kind of slot in, and they're pretty deep. Like with everybody going, they're not going to be a tough out by any means. The goaltending is glaring, but that is besides the point, because I think that they have enough depth now where we haven't seen this amount of depth in their forward group that may be able to get them out of any trouble that their goaltending might cause them. And I think their ability to bounce back has been also a lot better this year, where they're not getting, you know, they've went through the worst of the stretches this year at times. And it just seems that they've kind of been through it all right now. So I think their ability to bounce back is a little bit better. And if they do catch a loss in one of the playoff series, you know, I think they'll be able to put out a better effort. And, you know, once Ryan Nugent Hopkins gets back in the lineup, you're going to have to make some tough decisions with who's going to come out of that bottom six. And you have the flexibility options to kind of bring people up and down and shuffle things around and give a bunch of different looks, which could, you know, throw some teams for a loop too. So the defense is pretty solid, I think. You can't really complain. You got a bunch of guys that are used to playing big minutes. I think Keith and Nurse will do that in the playoffs. And just like we said, the opportunity that they have with the competition is a prime for them right now. And I think that they're in a good situation because of that as well.
Well, whether you can't complain or you can complain, people are complaining. If you saw the comments about Darnell Nurse from the Dallas game, Brian, do you think that the 48-second brain fart that the Oilers had against Dallas is concerning? I don't like Julian. I don't envision another long losing stretch like they had in the middle of the season. But do you worry about stuff like that, where they came back, they tied it, they actually took the lead, and then they let 2 goals in and got shut down by a Dallas team that's really stingy defensively? Does that worry you, or is that just one of those things, man? Okay, now we know that can happen to us. Let's not do that again.
Well, it's not the first time it's happened necessarily, right? Eventually, you got to start learning from these things. I think there's that potential within them. Like, I mean, you can look at these things as growing experiences, but I've seen potential growing experiences in the past that they haven't seen to grow from yet either. So it's not overly concerning. It's probably mostly concerning in the sense that they could have put. I mean, it was a 4-point swing against the team that you're trying to hold off for one of the final playoff spots. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, they've had opportunities to learn their lessons in the past, and they haven't.
Yeah, let's hope that that's not a sign of things to come. I think it'll be all right though. Colton, let's talk about a couple guys who are really, really hot for the Oilers right now, and both in the short term and the long term. Kailer Yamamoto has got like 10 points in 7 games. Evander Kane is on a crazy streak. I think he's got like 21 points in 24 games. The guy's just on fire. One, what do you think of these two guys in the way that they're playing right now? And two, what do you think this means in terms of next year? Is this something that the Oilers look at and go, you know what, we really would like to have Evander Kane come back?
Yeah, so I think first with both of them, I think with the addition of Kane, like everyone kind of knew on the ice that he would probably perform. He's done it for a number of years now. It was more kind of the off-ice stuff you were worried about, but so far that's all been great. And then Yamamoto's really kind of playing like the guy he was when he got called up late, I think in the 2019-20 season. So I think for sure you look to bring both of them back next year. I don't know if you want to commit a ton of money to either. I think just with Kane, with everything that's gone on, I don't think he'll be able to command a ton in free agency anyway. So maybe he looks to come back to the Oilers for one more year and kind of look to prove himself and get a bigger deal the following year. And then for Yamamoto too, I would be interested in bringing him back, especially with how he's played lately. But again, I think you got to be careful that you don't overpay just because he's gotten hot at this time, because we've seen like he can get hot like this, and then when he's not, there's lots of times that he really isn't providing a lot either. So I think you have to really keep in mind the inconsistencies. But with that being said, I would like to see both of them back.
If you had to pick, and I'll ask this of everybody, if it meant you lost one of the three, would you prefer to lose Puljujarvi, Yamamoto, or Evander Kane?
Yamamoto to me. I think Kane provides them with the scoring winger that they haven't had in a long time. And I think he's proven to be really beneficial on that line with McDavid right now. So I'd say Yamamoto.
Julian, Colton doesn't think that Evander Kane's going to get a huge offer in free agency. I'm not sure about that, to be honest with you. If he plays 40 games, he gets 20-something goals. That's like a 40-goal pace that some team is going to probably come. What do you think? Do you think that he's going to have to prove himself for another season, or this short stint, this short window has already shown teams that, yeah, maybe he's worth taking a flyer on?
I don't know. It'll be tough because I think that a lot of teams with money and cap won't mind throwing the cash at him for sure. But I think he kind of owes it to the Oilers almost to be giving him a second shot in this chance. And I think he'll want to stay here just because of how the success he's kind of had so quickly. So I think he'll want to come back. I don't know what that would look like. I think that depending on what that's going to be, will determine what you end up doing with those RFAs and Puljujarvi and Yamamoto, just because, I think one of them can get a bridge deal. I'm not sure which one. To me, it would be Puljujarvi, where you get a little, maybe it's a 3x3.5 or some sort of deal like that. And then Yamamoto would be like more of a 1 year, what almost closer to what he is on now, just to keep everybody still in the running. And I think you got to ship out some contracts in order to figure out a way to get Kane back if he's going to command more in free agency. That's kind of the route I would go, but I think they're all pretty much, necessary to want to try and keep and work a way around it. And Cassian's probably going to be the odd one out to try and save that money. Maybe it'll go to Kane. But in terms of, Yamamoto's played really well, but I just there's still something there for me. I've always been kind of reluctant to say he's let's give him some money and keep him around here long term. Like you said, we've seen his streakiness before, and I think Puljujarvi is just a bigger, more, I guess, full forward that you can kind of trust more. And once he gets going, I think he'll be able to provide an even bigger boost to the lineup too.
Brian, let's say that the Oilers, just for sake of round numbers, let's say the Oilers give Yamamoto 2, Puljujarvi 2, and then they're looking at Evander Kane around 5, because that's my prediction, is that somebody's probably going to offer this dude $5 million. So for the Oilers to keep him, it's probably going to cost that. Do you think fans will freak out over that number? Or do you think fans will be like, yeah, look, he's that good. Like we got it. If it costs us 5 to keep him for a year or two, we should do it.
If Kane continues to play like this and things do not go off the rails on or off ice for the remainder from now until it's time for him to get paid, he's going to get paid. And I don't think fans will have any issue. I mean, he's still young enough that 5 years isn't that hard to swallow. So yeah, I don't think anyone would have any issue with it. I gotta disagree with my man Julian here that I don't think he's going to take a discount because the Oilers gave him a chance. I think if he can get paid, he's going to go where he can get paid. It's a nice sentiment to think that he's found a loving home here and he's going to want to stick around and he the guys are going to win championships for the next year. I just don't see that coming. I think like you said, Jim, I think people are there's teams that have cap space. If he scores 20 plus goals, and if he keeps his nose clean, he's going to have a lot of people knocking on his door.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if we know the full story on what his financial situation is, but just the background that we've heard, he wants to get paid. He needs to get paid, right? Like that's just this small discount that he's taken with the Oilers.
We know he likes his money. We've seen
it's a show me deal, right? It's like, let me come in and do what I know I can do so that I can prove that I'm worth what I was making over there.
Yeah.
Right?
I will say though, if he is going to make $5 million and that's what the asking price is going to be, there's no way the Oilers are like need to do that. Like they cannot make that move because they're going to be back to square one with everything else that they've tried to accomplish, that it is not worth it for them to go down that path.
Yeah.
Like they cannot afford to do that. It's get those RFAs signed and that's your priority. And if you get Kane, great. If you can fit him in, if not, then you got to let him walk. And that's the way it's got to go.
Yeah, and then I'll say this too, to that point, that no matter how good, like he's on his best behavior right now. Like you said, this is a show me deal. He wants to prove himself. I don't care if everything goes perfect for the next 3 months, 2 months, whatever, however long it may be. I still don't have any more belief that if you had him for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, that things aren't eventually going to go off the rails with him. So I think this is a marriage of convenience right now. He has to be on his best behavior. He will be. You get the most out of him that you can. And then, because
shake hands and go your separate ways.
Exactly. And because you can't fit him in anyway, right? Like you said, Julian, like you'd have to move so many pieces to make that contract work. I'd rather see them commit to Yamo and Puljujarvi, who are much younger.
Cost controlled.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. And do you think that someone like Connor McDavid is thinking what these two guys are thinking? Like if Evander Kane leaves because he can't be like you can't afford him at the money that he's going to ask for. What does Connor McDavid think about that? Now we can't jump in his head, but I'm just theoretically speaking, do you assume that he would be like, seriously, dudes, finally you've got somebody for me to play with. We have instant chemistry, and now you're going to let him walk.
I mean, that's actually an interesting point, and I never really even considered that, just because like it's been such a good fit between those two right now. So I'm sure that if you were to ask him in private right now, he definitely would want to keep him around for longer than just this season, because I mean it's been a great fit. But with that being said, I do agree with what these guys said, especially Brian. I think like there's a lot of risk to keeping him around after this season. Like if he gets a contract where he gets paid a bit, then maybe he doesn't have to, be on his best behavior like Brian alluded to. So I think there's a lot of risk, but that is a very interesting point about McDavid that I didn't consider.
If he comes into Ken Holland's office and says, we got to bring this guy back, he's just going to break out the record book and say, listen, this is how much money we have. You tell me how we get this done.
I asked the question because I think if Connor McDavid does that, I think he moves heaven and earth to sign Evander Kane.
If
right?
that's the case, I think Hyman would be on the block at that point. Like, honestly, that's Hyman money. Like, that's like, you wouldn't want to do it because he literally signed him to a 5-year deal for that reason. But like, you would be looking at a similar size deal for Kane, right? Like, and it's at that point, it's kind of like you need to let somebody go of that, like, or you're going to end up cheaping out on defense or still be without a goalie. Like, you have decisions to make. And I don't think it's worth it to move Hyman if you're just going to keep Evander Kane. Like, I don't see, like, to me, that's not worth it. I don't think it's possible to do so and get everybody else that needs signed to be signed with the money that they're going to have available.
Yeah, I don't think you move Hyman. I don't believe that McDavid would want Hyman to go either. I don't think Holland wants Hyman to go. I think he's invested in Zach Hyman. What I would do wonder is if you can move Barry, if you can move Cassian, if you can
Those two will be gone for sure.
If you
but
have to sacrifice a Puljujarvi or a Yamamoto, and I think that might be
that's where the question will be.
where you'd have to do that, right?
Then does that allow you to add? Well, I'll preface this by saying they already have the goalie they need, but no one else seems to think so. So then, if you make those moves, would you still be able to bring in the big free agent goalie that everybody wants?
You
have to plan for that. You have to plan for that like immediately before the season's over. You have to be planning for a $4.5 million, $4.5 to $5 million to give to a goalie, 100%.
Yeah, unless you think there's a goalie out there that you want that's $3 million, because Hoskins coming off the books at 4.5, and I don't know who's out there for cheaper than that, but maybe that's what they think about doing, and they go, okay, well, we can get Evander Kane, but then we can't spend the money on the goalie that we want, so we'll have to find somebody for 3, and we go with Skinner and Smith for 1 more. Like, I don't know what they do. It's a very interesting dilemma, because the one downside of Evander Kane playing so well is that you then have to make tough decisions, and those tough decisions are, do we want him back? And if we need him back and he's going to ask for money, we got to find it, and we don't have it. Right. So it'll be really, really interesting. All right. To close things off, let's do our, what do we call it? The +1, -1. Is that what it's called? All right. Colton, we'll start with you. If there's a +1, -1, or both, what would you say it was for this week?
Yeah, I'll give it to Yamamoto. We were talking about him earlier, but just, I think he was catching a lot of heat from myself and just a lot of fans, Oilers fans, for the start he had to the season. I think lately he's really looked a lot more comfortable, and hopefully he can just continue this down the stretch and into the playoffs.
Julian, you got a +1 or a -1?
Well, I'll go a little bit of both. I'll do my -1 to Ken Holland, just because I think that he kind of still missed the mark on everything. I think that he could have did more to put them in a better situation, given the opportunity they had, like we discussed earlier. And my +1 will go to the newcomers in Kulak and Brassard with that little color coordinating matching when they came into the, if you missed the picture, it's on their Twitter, Oilers Twitter, I believe. And they were nice little green joggers and gray tracksuit. So they looked sharp.
If that wasn't intentional, that was pretty funny. Brian, what about you?
I'm just going to copy Colton. I'm sorry, I got nothing original, but I really want to give it to Yamo too. I just think he's been playing fantastic lately. And sort of to Kane, because I think the fact that he's playing, Kane seems to have inspired this, like he seems to have emboldened Yamamoto to maybe play a bit more aggressive, like take a bit more risks, getting guys grills a bit more, because he knows he's got his sidekick watching his back. And I think that's something to take into consideration here when you are looking at building this roster and whether you do bring Kane back. But anyway, Yamamoto with a side +1 to Evander Kane.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if the Oilers feel a little bit more like they've got an extra layer of protection on with Evander Kane out there, right? Because when you've got Nurse, Cassian, Evander Kane, you've got some guys on there now. We used to think that the Oilers weren't all that physical, but they've got some guys that'll hang.
The difference between Kane and Cassian, I think, is that Kane actually, like, he always seems to be ready to, like, there's no hesitation. He was backing up Draisaitl last night.
Yeah, you don't know which version of Cassian you're going to get.
Yeah.
I'm going to go -1 here, but it isn't for any sort of on-ice thing. The one thing I wasn't sure about, and this is probably not a big deal, but giving Derek Brassard number 16 when Tyler Benson was wearing it this season, I was a little shocked by that, to be honest with you. I'm not sure why they did that. I'm just wondering if they just figured Tyler Benson will be back, or if Tyler Benson and Derek Brassard had a conversation and Brassard said, hey, can I have 16? Tyler Benson's like, sure. I'm not really sure what the story was there, but you don't see that very often, where a guy who's actively wearing the number and played for you just a couple of games ago is no longer wearing that number while he's still an active part of the team, and Brassard comes in and he gets it. And Brassard's not like a star or nothing. No, he's just a fourth line guy. So I was a little shocked by that it seemed like a little bit of a diss to Tyler Benson, but for all we know, they worked it out, and I'm
sure you got a Rolex or something.
Yeah, here's a case of beer. Here's $5,000 or whatever they do to get the jersey, right? But I saw that and I was like, really? That's interesting, because that tells me that Benson's either changed his number and freely, or he won't be back this season at all.
Probably both.
Yeah, who knows? All right, guys, appreciate it. Thank you. We'll do this again next week. We'll see how the new guys fit in. If Kulak and Brassard can add a little something to the lineup, there's a handful of games. I suppose we should predict the score. Is it San Jose they play? Is that the game?
Yeah.
All right, Colton, you got a prediction for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think just San Jose not being in a playoff spot. I know they just beat the Flames, but I'll take the Oilers 5-2 in that one.
Julian, what about you?
So I was going to go close to that. I'll go 5-3. It'll be Kakanen's first game, so they might have a little bit of spunk in them, the Sharks. So I'll go 5-3.
Brian?
7-4.
Ooh, a high scoring affair. Take the over. I'll go 4-1. I think the Oilers are going to win. I think they're a little embarrassed by what happened in Dallas, and they don't want that to happen again. So I think they'll get a good start. San Jose, they don't got a lot to play for, but that doesn't mean they won't play hard. It's just I have a feeling the Oilers will come out with something to prove. They're at home. They won 5 straight at home. So I think they're on a roll here. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. Thank you very much. For everybody else, it's been another edition of THW Oilers Overtime. Don't forget, check out the hockeywriters.com. Sign up for the morningskate.io newsletter. Check out the YouTube channel. I was busy this weekend making videos with all the trades that were going down. So like and subscribe to the video. That would help me out a lot. And so would THW would appreciate it too. All right, guys. Thanks. And we'll talk to you guys next week.